So Bungie have recently and unsurprisingly just announced that Marathon, their latest live service shooter, which is going to be their big flagship title moving forward, has been delayed to an unspecified date. Now I think it's fair to say that anybody that has been following the ongoings with this game won't really find this as a surprise. However, there is still a little smidgen, just a very small bit of potential hope that this game might stick the landing when it does come out. Now last time I made a video covering Marathon, only 0.2% of you guys that watched were actually subscribed. So if you are new here and you do enjoy these type of videos, please do subscribe as it really does help out the channel. Anyway, when it comes to Marathon getting delayed, as I sort of said in the last video where we covered this, I do honestly think this is the best course of action they can take if they actually still want this game to be somewhat of a success. I think it's fair to say that Marathon obviously has gotten off to a really rocky start before all of this delay. So obviously a few weeks ago now you had the claims made against Bungie that they'd stolen artwork for Marathon, and there was literally dozens of artwork pieces just littered all throughout Marathon assets that had been stolen by somebody called Anti-Real. There were things like decals, icons, text sheets, which just build up so much of Marathon's art style and just the actual in-game assets that are there and fully on show. It literally was a one-to-one lifting of the artwork. I don't think it helped the situation that Bungie did initially sort of deny this, or not deny it, but tried to sort of make themselves out to be better in the situation. They sort of tried to blame previous employees, which was a load of hogwash because actual current Bungie employees still followed Anti-Real, so they would have still had access to all of their designs, so it just kind of fell a bit flat. What was even worse is that they don't actually know to the extent of which the artwork has been copied, so they tried to do a live stream a couple of weeks afterwards to just, you know, highlight Marathon a bit further, get it out there, get people excited, but they physically couldn't show any more gameplay because they didn't want to cause any more issues regarding stealing artwork. They don't know to the extent of which it is actually within their game, which is absolutely shocking. It doesn't help the situation that this isn't like Bungie's first time they've been caught stealing art. There was loads of different instances of it also occurring during Destiny and Destiny 2. And again, it was the same sort of thing. It was just general fan art that would just get basically copy and pasted into the game, and there was no recognition or sort of incentive or any payment for using those assets. It was purely just a, oh, we'll take that, and away we go. Now when you do combine all that controversy with what was at best a lukewarm reception to the gameplay reveal initially, it's kind of easy to understand why this has been pushed back. Obviously when you think about games that have been produced recently by Sony, I know it's Bungie's game, but you know, Sony obviously own Bungie now, you gotta go back to Concord, right? Literally this game came out, had a horrendous launch, and they cancelled it, and they don't want to repeat the same thing. So even though it's definitely going to cost a lot more money and take a lot more time and take away from a lot of their revenue streams by delaying it, in the long run, in theory, this should benefit both them and Bungie's credibility. If there is any credibility left to Bungie given everything what's happened. Now when it does come to this actual delay itself, I do think it's quite interesting how Bungie have framed this. So they've essentially come out and said, and I quote, this is going to give them a chance to calibrate and focus the game on what will make it uniquely compelling. Now, to me, that just screams that they're going to actually try and give it a narrative mode. Whether that is its own mode or whether that is just more of a narrative storyline actually interwoven into the live service version of this shooter, I'm interested by that. Again, this is obviously based upon the classic Marathon, which was Bungie's first, or one of Bungie's first ever games, which had such a rich vein of lore behind it. And if there are any fans of that game, they'll obviously appreciate this game way more if it at the very least harkens back to that in some fold. Again, I'm not fully with it on my Marathon lore, but from what I understand, it essentially was the basis of what Halo was then built upon, and that has a shit ton of lore. So there's clearly more there than what we've seen from these trailers and from the gameplay reveals, which very much was not in the game at this present moment. Now Bungie did further break down what they do aim to improve on with this delay, and one of the areas is actually upping the survival game. So that includes things like more challenging and engaging AI encounters, which is a good thing. Again, I didn't play the game personally, but from what I saw from various reviews, the AIs are basically useless in the game. Like, there's no point in having them there. They're literally just, well, they're NPCs by name, NPCs by nature. They don't do anything. It's just like a tick box exercise taking them out of the match. There's also more rewarding runs with new types of loot and dynamic events. Again, when it comes to these sort of extraction shooters where it's fully based upon essentially just improving your loot, you do get to a stage where it does just get very monotonous and repetitive, right? I mean, I've genuinely experienced that with Destiny. So hearing that there's going to be different types and more dynamic events, it's all good stuff. It's all just kind of whatever vague speech, but I guess it's good to know that they're looking into it. And they've also claimed that they're going to try and make combat more tense and strategic. Again, when it comes to those type of games, it tends to be, you got the best weapon, you're going to do the most damage, you're going to be fine. But if they can look to try and make it more strategic based, then I'm all for that. I personally think some of the biggest things they've said they're going to work on whilst this game is sort of in its hiatus is actually adding more social experiences. Now that does include things like proximity chat, so essentially those games where you are just playing with your headset, you're not exactly teamed up and squadded up, it just kind of makes the game feel more real. Like, these social stories do sort of essentially come to life in a way. I just think proximity chat in games like this is brilliant. Like, it just makes everything feel much more real. And when you can get yourself invested in a game like that, you're more likely to keep playing it, spending money on it. It seems like a win-win for both the player and for Bungie. They've also said they're going to try and make the experience better for solo and duos players. Now, I think that's really, really important because, from my understanding, Marathon can only be searched currently in a game of trios, and that's it. So even if you load in on your ones, you're just going to be in a 1v3. Whoever thought that idea was a good idea is a fucking idiot. However, the fact they're now rectifying it both for that and for duos, fair enough. You've identified an issue, fans have told you a problem, you're going to fix it. That's good. Hopefully it doesn't take like another 18 months to do that, because funnily enough some people do want to play this game, but still, well done on trying to improve that. Bitchiness aside though, and even though we've kind of credited Bungie so far this video with their choice to delay this game, I do think it's absolutely unacceptable that the actual devs that have worked on the game weren't all made aware prior to the news announcement going out that this game was being delayed. That in itself is just terrible. You just need some form of internal communications to say that, at least before it goes out to the public, surely. Like, this game has received a lot of shit in the last few weeks, and to not even tell the people that have been dealing with that shit personally, that's just not right. Ultimately though, was it the right decision to delay this game? I think the obvious answer is yes. I think Sony saw the writing on the wall. I think they saw all the backlash that Bungie have had both with regarding the art and just generally the game itself, and they probably looked at previous failures and thought, yeah, Bungie's too important to have a failure like this again. Like, again, obviously Concord from a new developer, it's not the same thing, but it could have been as big of a financial problem for Sony. And not only that, just sheer reputational wise, like obviously Bungie will always hold their own core fan base because there's such a big presence in the gaming industry. Like, I'm always going to be a little bit of a fan of Bungie because I love the Halo series, but that loyalty does wane and people will soon start to realise, yeah, these guys fell off, they don't make good games anymore. And with the state that Marathon looked to be in from what we'd seen up until this point, that was only going to more hinder their credibility. At least in my opinion. I know some people thought it looked great and it was going to play great and it was going to be the best thing ever, but clearly the studio didn't. But more importantly than that, what do you guys think? Are you guys surprised that Marathon's actually been officially delayed, or you're expecting it like myself? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you are new here and you have enjoyed, please do consider subscribing, as it really does support the channel massively. Anyway, thanks ever so much for watching. Hope to see you in another video sometime soon.